Taurine, a staple in our energy drinks. It promises vitality and energy, but is it really that effective? Because especially with more of our athletes, we're seeing that taurine is becoming a little bit more popular. But what is taurine? How much do we need if it does work? And in what contexts would it actually help? So if we're looking at taurine, taurine is an amino acid that we have in our body. It's actually very abundant, and we mostly use it in our electrical, excitable tissues. So that's going to be, interestingly enough, our retina and our eyes. It's going to be our heart muscles, and it's also going to be our, let's say, our movement muscles, our gym muscles as well. So if taurine is very abundant in those muscles and we supplement it, will we not be getting extra benefits because of how taurine works in muscle contractions? But if we're looking at taurine, what are our main sources that we get taurine from actually? So taurine we mostly find in our meat and our chicken and our fish, our shellfish as well, but then as well our dairy. So, but with that, if you're following more of a plant-based diet where you're getting more, let's say, plant-based proteins, should you be worried? And even though plant-based diets are lower in taurine generally, is that we'll find that our liver can actually make a certain amount of taurine naturally. And thus it would be unlikely that we'd have a deficiency, besides for if your overall diet is low in taurine for a long period of time. So the basis of what taurine does in our body is that it actually works with our cell protective mechanisms, right? So it works with our cell, basically volume, it protects the cell membranes, it helps with calcium balance in our cells as well. So it has a lot of important functions in the body. But with that, taurine actually became quite popular in hospitals, interestingly enough, because what they found is that patients that had heart failure issues or basically cardiovascular challenges, once they supplemented taurine, they actually found that the muscles worked better and they got better outcomes, the heart pumped a little bit better, so to say. And then they thought, okay, but if that helps in that context with someone that's now struggling there and has low taurine levels, let's say in their heart, if we increase those levels in, let's say, our athletes, would we not get better? So from an athletic standpoint, right, is that we get our type 1 fibers and our type 2 fibers. Now what they basically are is that your type 1 fibers, or better known as our slow twitch fibers, that's more for our endurance type of, let's say, activity. So let's say going for a run, and then we get our type 2 fibers or our fast twitch muscles, which is then going to be basically for our sprinting and explosive activity. But what they've also seen is that in our type 1 fibers, so more of our endurance type muscles, is that taurine is much higher in those muscles. And one of the big things of what taurine does is that if you're looking at these two proteins that we find in muscles called our force producing proteins. So we've got actin and myosin. So imagine actin and myosin as if this is a layer and this is another layer. So actin and myosin. When we do let's say a bicep curl, is that these two, actin and myosin, pull over each other with quite a bit of force, and that is what actually causes the contraction. But taurine has quite an important role in managing the calcium homeostasis within that muscle. So that is what actually helps to control those muscle contractions. So we now see that now the big reason for research is that, but if we increase our taurine levels and the contractions a bit in the muscles, especially with our type 1 fibers, with our endurance fibers, right, won't those athletes see better performance? Now there's a wide range of studies done, or I could spend a long time on this, but basically they looked at different ages, different groups, trained and untrained, specific scenarios, and what they basically found is that if you're coming more from an untrained standpoint and maybe your overall protein levels are low and you're getting into the endurance side of things, you are more likely to actually get a slight benefit from that. But if you are an already trained athlete that also has, let's say, a high level of taurine in their muscles already, because what they've seen is that in trained athletes, you actually have more taurine in that muscle already, but that might be already because you're having a high protein diet overall. And then with that is that we'll see with the well-trained athletes not really getting any benefit at all. Some research showing a slight improvement and some actually showing none at all. So how do we actually apply this context? So there was a very interesting study where they took cyclists and then they gave them 1.66 grams of taurine 3 times a day, and then they gave it over the span of 7 days. So you would expect that the taurine levels would be higher, and in the other group they gave a placebo. But during the exercise and after the exercise, they actually saw that the taurine levels were actually the same. It actually wasn't statistically different. So the conclusion of this is basically to say that if we're coming from a standpoint of, let's say, low protein diet, and we might not be getting good quality protein, and you're going to exercise, taurine might give you, basically saturating those taurine levels will help you to an extent. But if you are looking to increase, let's say, your taurine levels and you would like to supplement it, just note is that they've seen in the research is that after taking taurine, is that after stopping taking it, it comes back to its normal levels within a few days. So meaning it would be something that you'd need to, let's say, take long term at a higher level. But as I said, the more trained you are, the more high your protein intake is, and you're already at that saturation level, will you actually be getting benefits? The research doesn't really show that at all. So maybe in some cases a slight improvement, but in general, is it worth your money? That's the question we need to ask ourselves. But if you are looking to research and how much to take, what the research does show is that basically if you're taking between 1.5 and 3 grams a day, is that is the normal kind of level that we're looking at. We definitely do not want to be going closer to the 5 to 10 grams a day, especially closer to the upper side of that, because it can lead to some other unwanted gut issues, shall we say. So, but as we mentioned, having a normal high quality protein diet, you should be at those normal levels anyway. Something interesting that they saw about those that have pre-hypertension and those that are classified as having high blood pressure is that with taurine supplementation, what they did was that they've given 1.5 grams of taurine 3 times a day, so spread throughout the day, so 4.5 grams total, and they gave that for a certain amount of time, and then they actually saw that over time that the blood pressure levels actually started to drop a little bit. And the reason for this is taurine, because of how it actually works in the muscles in the heart, is that it causes something called vasodilation. So imagine vaso is, let's say if that's an artery, and that dilation means it just gets bigger, so the muscles actually relax. So there's actually higher blood flow that comes through that around the body. So they've actually seen that because of the better circulation and because of the vasodilation, is that's actually where the blood pressure levels drop a little bit. Of course, you first need to just discuss with your doctor, is it safe for you to take or not? But on that, they also found another bit of interesting research, is that they saw that those that have type 1 diabetes actually on average have 25% less taurine in their muscles. Now they're not sure, was it the taurine deficiency that's related to the diabetes or the diabetes that related to the taurine being low, but they did see that it would be recommended that if you are diabetic and not getting enough protein in your diet, is that having taurine, supplementing with taurine with similar dosages as we mentioned with the high blood pressure, is that can also lead to just saturating those levels overall. Taurine summary. Does it actually work? It all depends on context. If you are already a trained athlete that has a high protein diet that doesn't have, let's say, any heart, cardiovascular issues, will taurine really benefit you? The results, the studies don't really show that. If anything, a slight improvement. On the other hand, if you're someone that, let's say, has pre-hypertension or high blood pressure, if you have diabetes, if you're having a lower protein diet, you're untrained, and you do supplement with that taurine, as we mentioned, between 1 to 5 grams a day is going to be the safe limit, where they normally recommend 3 grams a day for a certain amount of time to help you get back to those saturation levels in your muscles, can lead to you having slightly better improvements. I just want to note that it's not going to be a colossal improvement, but it's just making sure that you are getting to your levels of saturation to make sure that you can get the best out of your body.